The Articles of Confederation have given power mostly to the state governments instead of our citizens. Therefore, we, the state of Pennsylvania, propose that we limit the power of the unicameral legislature and allow for popular vote in order to provide representation for the states that is fair, since it allows for the representation of all citizens, and is efficient since we no longer would need the unanimous vote of all 13 states to pass an amendment. The use of popular vote will also let us elect the president in a way that represents the people in the states, with larger states having more representation than smaller ones, and it will let northern states gradually abolish slavery in the South. Also, stopping fugitive slavery. First, the New Jersey plan calls for a unicameral legislature and equal representation for each state, based on the belief that all states should have equal power, regardless of population. Therefore, not all of our people would be fairly represented, clearly going against our intentions to establish a constitutional democracy. On the other hand, the Virginia plan proposes the number of representatives for each state should be based on the state's population and size. However, the Virginia plan also does absolutely favor popular vote, since when, for example, 60% of a state votes for a certain president, all the electors' votes go to that president, with the other 40% of the population not being represented. With this occurring in several states, the election of a president can sometimes end up not being based on popular vote, but on the electors' vote. To solve for this, we propose that we offer representation through popular vote without the system of electors in the Electoral College. This would eliminate the probability of having a president elected based on the vote of representatives. The legislative, executive, and judicial branches would remain, however. Their powers would be limited through checks and balances that they will place on each other. In terms of determining the representation given to each state, slaves shouldn't be included in population count because they are only property and are already not allowed to vote. By not allowing for the slaves to count as part of the population count, we are limiting the influence of the South. Furthermore, in viewing slaves as property, slave owners would be taxed for this property, increasing revenue for the federal government. Likewise, extra taxes would discourage slave owners from owning more slaves, eventually eliminating slavery. Also, by limiting the southern states' voting in comparison to that of the northern states, the North will be able to pass laws that limit and eventually end slavery. Another benefit to the northern states' voting advantage is that a law can be passed to allow the government to impose tariffs on goods to protect against foreign competition. Northern states want regulation of interstate commerce to help their businesses run smoother, but the southern states oppose this, so our voting advantage can solve for this economic issue and also lead to one currency between all states instead of the several in use now. Establishing a market economy will raise funds for the government to pay off the war debt, also ending other countries' lack of faith in us and raise funds to create the national military we lack.
The purpose of creating this constitution is to improve our political, economical, and social situations that are present under Articles of Confederation. Therefore, establishing a unicameral legislature as in the New Jersey plan or any other means of representation in which states receive the same amount of representation is in no means an improvement from the Articles of Confederation. Ultimately, governments such as in the New Jersey plan are only a continuation of the old style of government under the Articles of Confederation, in that there is a unicameral legislature with one vote per state. Therefore, our proposal to eradicate the power of the legislators and base representation on popular vote is the most ideal alternative to our dilemma, because it provides all citizens with a true opportunity of representation instead of being represented by electors and not having their own opinions heard.
Do you plan to cooperate with the smaller states on this issue?
Yes, to meet the southern states halfway, there is the Great Compromise. The Great Compromise would create a bicameral Congress. The upper house, called the Senate, will consist of 2 delegates from each state, regardless of size or population. Representation in the lower house, called the House of Representatives, would be distributed according to the population from each state. The larger the state, the more representatives in the House. However, our condition is that we split up each state's electors between districts within states based on their populations. With each of the several districts having their own electors, they can each have their own set of electors to vote for a president based on the popular vote in that district. This would prevent the unfair election of a president based on the amount of electors in each state, because not all the electors in the state would be voting for the same president.
Do you plan to factor slavery into all this?
Yeah. Slaves will not be counted as part of the population when considering distribution of electors, because they are simply viewed as property in the southern states and are only seen as humans now in order to benefit the South. The 3/5 compromise offers for slaves to be counted as 3/5 of a person when apportioning seats in the House of Representatives. However, this also is not logical because it will contradict our statement that slaves are only property in the South. Furthermore, by accepting this condition, we would be given into the South, allowing for slavery to continue and for Southern power and representation to increase. The only way for these slaves to count as part of the population is for them to be free citizens. Slaves account for 30% of the Southern population. Therefore, it proved to be an issue for the South to accept our terms. However, since we are not outright banning slavery and allowing for its present continuation, the South could at least accept our conditions.